Hi guys and welcome to today's video. So today I'm going to talk you through my September and October reading. It's currently the 31st of October and although we've still got half a day I'm definitely not going to finish another book. There is another book that I'm actually vlogging reading and that's Zoe Suggs' new book, which is One for Sorrow, The Magpie Society, which I actually might finish today because it's quite like a quick book to read. But I'm going to talk you through all of the books that I read in September and October and my thoughts on them. So if you're interested to see what I've read, please keep watching. Okay, so as usual I listened to a few audiobooks and I borrowed a few ebooks of my library, so I don't have absolutely everything to show you physically, but I'm going to talk you through all of the books anyway. So the first book I read in September was I Found You by Jewell, and I listened to this on audiobook. I picked this one up after really enjoying one of her other books that I read earlier in the summer, and it's basically two consecutive storylines that are set in the same time, and there's one kind of like single mum who is, I believe, living somewhere in like Norfolk by the coast on the beach, and then there is a 21-year-old girl who's just got married and she is living kind of in London suburbs, and her husband goes missing. And simultaneously some random guy turns up on the beach without any memory of who he is in Norfolk, and you're basically trying to see who the guy is in Norfolk, because the single mum, whose name I've forgotten, brings him into her home and lets him stay in their home and is helping him try and remember. And then our 21-year-old, she is actually from a different country. I think it was somewhere like the Ukraine, and she obviously reports her husband missing and she can't find him, and the police tell her that her husband doesn't even exist, like there's no record of him existing. So they're not really taking her seriously, so she's kind of set off on her own mission to find her husband. And the two storylines coincide and you find out, I don't want to spoil it for you, but basically you find out how they're intersected and why this guy's lost his memory. And I really enjoyed it. It was a really good mystery. It seemed like it was going to be predictable. It actually wasn't. Oh, there's also another timeline plot which is like set years before, when the guy who's lost his memory was basically a teenager, and you see how all of them intersect. And I really enjoyed it and I would definitely recommend it if you're looking for a mystery book to read. The next book I read was another audiobook and it was called A Girl Named Anna by Lizzie Barber, and again this was two consecutive stories set in England and America. Followed two different teenage girls. The one in America was basically growing up not necessarily in a cult, she just lived with her mum, but she wasn't allowed to do anything. She wasn't allowed to go to the local theme park. Her mum was very religious, they went to like church every Sunday and she just wasn't really allowed out. And then you've got the girl in England whose older sister was actually kidnapped from the same local theme park in America as our other main character isn't allowed to go to. And again you see how the two stories kind of go along side by side, with our British family trying to figure out where their lost daughter is still years and years on, our American girl figuring out that something's not quite right and trying to escape her home. So again I really enjoyed that one. It was a little bit more predictable than I Found You. It was quite obvious what was going to happen, but the circumstance wasn't predictable, if that makes sense. So again, I'd recommend that one too if you're looking for a good little mystery. The next book I actually have physically, and it is The Language of Birds by Jill Dawson, and this I got in a reposed box earlier in the year. I can't remember which month it was, but I only got around to reading it in September. And it follows the story of Mandy and her friend Rosemary. So they met whilst they were both spending some time in a mental wellbeing facility, and both of them go on to become nannies in London to wealthy families. In fact, Mandy is the nanny for the children of a lady and a lord who are split up, and the lord is kind of spying on his separated wife. Now, this is actually set on a true story, and I read the Wikipedia page of the true story beforehand, and I really enjoyed this. It took me a little while to get through because it was relatively heavy, but again it's kind of like you know something's going to happen but you're not quite sure what and when, and All of the characters are quite complicated, and there's like little nuggets of information you find out about Mandy along the way. I really enjoyed this and I would definitely recommend it. I thought it was a really good fictional retelling of a true story. Yeah, would definitely recommend this. And so the next book I read is one that has been on my shelf for years. I think one of my teachers recommended it to me in sixth form or even GCSE, and I never actually got round to reading it despite the fact that I had bought it. And that is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Basically, I saw the advert for the Netflix film back in August or the beginning of September, and I was like, well, I want to watch the film really badly, but I want to read the book first. So I actually, even though I have the book physically, I knew that I'd be able to get through it quicker if I listened to the audiobook. So again, I downloaded the audiobook from my library. And this is a really classic, like, gothic story. And it follows our narrator, who is a young woman who's just married a widow, and you never actually really learn her name. I think you might do right at the end, but I can't even remember it myself. It's basically about what happened to his wife Rebecca and how she kind of still, not necessarily haunts, but kind of haunts Manderley, which is their big mansion that they live in. The staff are very much still in love with Rebecca despite the fact that she has died. And you basically find out what happened to her and how she died. It's absolutely chucking it down with rain outside, but it's really sunny. It looks really weird. There'll be a rainbow somewhere. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I think reading it as an audiobook definitely helped me because it is a chunky boy. And I think it would have taken me a while to get through because it's quite heavy language, because it is, it was published in 1938, so yeah. It's kind of classic English language, a bit heavy, but I really enjoyed it, and if you're looking for a classic to read, I would definitely recommend. Still going with the audiobooks, the next audiobook I listened to was The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, which follows a young black girl in America. Her name is Star, and at the beginning of the book, this isn't really ruining anything because it is at the beginning of the book, she goes to a house party with her brother's sister. Star shares the same dad with the brother, and then the brother shares the same mum with his other sister. They go to this party and basically get shut down, and whilst Star is leaving, she basically gets in the car with one of her childhood friends, Khalil, and they're pulled over by cops, and unfortunately the cop kills Khalil even though he hasn't done anything, and it kind of follows her journey with that and coming to terms with that and fighting for justice against what's happened to Khalil. And it also shows her within her school, which is majoritively white, and she's one of the only black people, and it kind of shows that she puts on a different face when she's with them to when she's with her family and her friends from home. Basically you see her grow into the person that she wants to be, who's fighting for what she wants and just being herself in every situation. I really enjoyed it. I thought had a really strong message to tell, and it is a YA, so it was quite easy to digest despite the heavy topic. So if you're looking for a fictional book around the topic of Black Lives Matter and equality in the States, then I definitely recommend it. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I definitely like to read more of Angie Thomas's books. So the next book is one I actually read, but it was an ebook, so I don't have to show you, but it was The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Morris, and again I really enjoyed this. I felt like there was a lot to learn from it. Again, it's another one that's based on a true story, although some of it is fictionalised, and it follows Lael, who is a Jewish Slovakian who is taken to one of the concentration camps at Auschwitz, and shows how he survived basically from the beginning right up until the end when the prisoners were liberated, and it shows his journey falling in love with a girl called Gita within the walls of Auschwitz, and how once it's liberated they're kind of separated because they leave at different times, and it shows how he sets out on a mission to find her again. That was a very small part. The majority of the book was about his experience in surviving the concentration camps, which was really interesting to see from that perspective. I'd actually never read any books about the Holocaust before, so although it was fictionalised, it was interesting to see it from that point of view, because I think I've only like studied it obviously in history class and obviously know the background of it, but I'd never read any actual text based upon it. And I know that there's another book that she's done that was based off one of the other characters that you see, Silka, and I definitely want to read that. Although it's obviously like a really heavy topic, it was actually a really easy read. Like I got through it quite quickly, which I wasn't expecting. I was expecting it to take me quite a while, but yeah, it was quite quick. And then to finish the month of October, another book that again is talking about important topics. The final book I read is Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People by Ronnie Edo Lodge. Again, this is really, really enlightening. It's Ronnie Edo Lodge is a British black woman, and the book goes through, the first chapter is like the history of black people in Britain and what they've faced throughout the years. And there was a lot of stuff in here that I did not know, that we had definitely not been taught in school, and it just opened my eyes to how much there is to learn on this topic and how much further we have to go. The second chapter is called The System, and it's basically about systematic racism and what that is. Then she talks about white privilege and what that is. And yeah, she goes through her own experiences and then also puts in a historical background as well as so I was talking about feminism and racism, which was really interesting. Yeah, I feel like I learned a lot from this book, and I would definitely recommend it if you haven't yet read it. Yeah, if she comes out with any more books, I'll definitely be reading them, because I definitely feel like I learned a lot from this. So that was all of the books that I read in September and October. I think it was 8 in total, which has definitely gone down since the beginning of this year. Beginning of this year I was like bashing out like 8-10 books a month. But yeah, that was everything I read. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you've read recently and any recommendations for books you have for me. Don't forget to leave a comment and like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.